Hey there, just a quick introduction for this video. This is actually a video that I originally recorded for my gaming channel, Corey Loses. There will be a link in the description to that. So some of you may have seen it already. It's also one of the first videos of this style that I did a few months ago. So there will be some different quality between it and some of the videos that I've put out and some of the improvements I've been trying to make over the last few months. But I still thought it was something that may interest people on this channel, since it's a topic that I'm sure a lot of lore fans are also interested in Star Wars video games, and a lot of people came over from Eckhart's channel and may not have seen any of the content from Corey Loses. So I thought, since I don't have a Wednesday video for this week, it might be fun to revisit that, and then Saturday we'll have our regular video like usual. But yeah, so hope you enjoy this. Again, may have some quality differences from some of the other videos I've been trying to put out, and some of the things that I'm working to fix in my current content as it is as well. But yeah, so enjoy, and see you on Saturday with our new lore video. The real-time strategy game Star Wars Empire at War was originally released nearly 13 years ago now, on February 16, 2006, and it remains the most recent major Star Wars strategy game to have come out. So one of the most common questions that's asked about it has been, will it ever get a sequel, or will we ever get another Star Wars real-time strategy game? In this video, I'll be talking a bit about the history of the game, the attempts over the years to get a sequel, and where the chances of it seem to stand currently. What I can say with pretty high degree of certainty is that a sequel or another Star Wars real-time strategy game isn't currently being made, but has that always been the case? And more importantly, will it always be the case? Well, it's not necessarily a given that Petroglyph Games, the studio that developed Empire at War and Forces of Corruption, would be the company to make a sequel, since plenty of sequels have been made by a different company than the original title, even within Star Wars. Petroglyph remains the only significant source of information on attempts to make a follow-up, so we're going to focus primarily on them. Petroglyph itself was formed out of several former Westwood employees after its acquisition by Electronic Arts in 2003, which is especially interesting considering that EA is now the company which holds the rights to make Star Wars games, and ultimately decides whether or not an Empire at War sequel or similar Star Wars RTS would be made, at least under the current arrangement between them and Disney. You may also know Westwood as the company which originally developed the Command & Conquer series of games before the takeover by EA. CNC, for those who are unfamiliar, was essentially the gold standard for RTS games at the time, so the idea of these veterans of the genre tackling the Star Wars IP was really exciting to many strategy game enthusiasts and Star Wars fans. And with Empire at War's late 2004 announcement as a new Star Wars RTS under development by Petroglyph for release in 2005, they seem to be well positioned to jump into a new flagship franchise for the studio. Their own statements and actions in the years around Empire at War's release, as well as the content of the game itself, seem to indicate that a more enduring franchise was their intention as well, instead of just one game in a single expansion pack. This was a pretty active time for the Star Wars franchise as a whole, with Revenge of the Sith coming out in May 2005 and several other popular Star Wars video game releases, including Battlefront 1 and 2 from Pandemic in September 2004 and November 2005, respectively, Republic Commando in February 2005, and Knights of the Old Republic 2 in December of 2004. Petroglyph and Lucasarts, the old publisher of all Star Wars games, fairly quickly followed up the February 2006 release of Empire at War with its first and only expansion, Forces of Corruption, in September of the same year. This expansion introduced the Zan Consortium as a new set of corrupt antagonists and anti-heroes. Most interestingly, the ending for it seemed to imply Petroglyph had further plans to continue the story in a sequel, or at least another expansion. So spoiler alert, but really if you haven't played this yet, it's your fault. The game ends with Tiber Zan capturing the Eclipse-class Superstar Destroyer while it was under construction at Kuwa, not for the ship's immense power, but for the information contained in its computers. He was even nice enough to let the fragmenting Empire have it back afterwards. One of the other heroes for the Zan Consortium, Silri, then steals some information of her own, and the final scene in the game shows her entering a vault filled with what appears to be hundreds of ancient Sith soldiers frozen in carbonite. So clearly Petroglyph had some ideas for where to take the series, but was LucasArts open to that? Despite the significant following the game had in the active modding community, not to mention the various balancing issues and bugs which could have been fairly easily addressed in some cases through patches, there were at least originally only one patch release for Forces of Corruption. Petroglyph developers would sometimes be active in helping modders track down certain issues to fix ourselves, but an official patch would have had to come through LucasArts. The year following Forces of Corruption's release, Petroglyph released Universe at War Earth Assault, another RTS with some similar mechanics released on an upgraded Alamo engine, the engine they'd originally developed for Empire at War, which they've continued to use on all their RTS games to this day, so from their end, some additional patches would likely have been feasible if the publisher were to sign off on them. Which is eventually what ended up happening under Disney, but we'll get to that later. Empire at War wouldn't have been the only game to have lost LucasArts support at the time, especially when the company was undergoing cuts of its own. Most notably, Republic Commando and Battlefront had sequels that were at least pitched or directly in the making before being cut themselves. The third Battlefront game we know was almost done. This was at a time too when demand for FPSs seemed a little bit higher and the RTS genre as a whole had not seen many particularly major releases besides games like StarCraft 2 in 2010 and Company of Heroes 2 in 2013, which may show part of why Empire at War had less chance of getting a sequel than these other games. Some of this shift in trends can potentially be explained by a good part of the market share moving towards the 4X and MOBA genre over the more story-oriented single-player RTS games like Empire at War, at least in the perception of larger companies. As we know, after all, nobody wants to play single-player games anymore anyways. By the time Disney acquired Star Wars, and granted Electronic Arts, who you may remember as the company which acquired Westwood earlier, as well as the source of the idea that people don't like single-player games anymore, because we all have so many friends we'd rather spend time with, most of the hope for an Empire at War sequel had gone away. A mere 4 years later, though, in September of 2017, a surprise update from Petroglyph and Disney was released for Forces of Corruption, over a decade after the game's initial release. This update fixed several major bugs with the game and restored multiplayer functionality through Steam, which had previously been lost when GameSpy servers had shut down. I also host multiplayer matches for Empire at War mods on this channel pretty often, by the way, so maybe subscribe if that sounds interesting to you. But Petroglyph issued the following statement, which I've taken from the PC Gamer article in the description. We've continued to watch the Empire at War community closely over the years and appreciate all the excellent support you've given us in the game. Our thanks to all of you for the great feedback, awesome mod packs, and overwhelmingly positive reviews, and Disney for facilitating the release of this work. We hope you enjoy this special update. In the following months, there were a few other patches released for Empire at War, as well as some additional patching for Star Wars Battlefront 2. No, I mean the original Star Wars Battlefront 2, not that one. There we go. And speculation rose again about the possibility for an Empire at War sequel being on the horizon. This was quickly squashed, however, in an AMA on Reddit about their new game, Forge Battalion. Petroglyph employee Virtual Ted had this to say when asked about the possibility of a new Empire at War sequel or expansion. Unfortunately, no official expansion is in the works, although we are still collecting data and hoping to get another patch out based on the feedback. This is something that is purely corporate. I don't have the details, but EA has the license to do all Star Wars games, and they seem focused on making a few titles at a very high quality bar. So they're using all their available resources to that end, which means that if you're not into FPS, it's not currently a priority. We've reached out to them a few times to see if they would be interested in contracting us to build an Empire at War 2 at the same quality level as their other Star Wars FPS titles, but nothing has resulted from that, yet. Another developer, Torpid, added, "We would love to work on Empire at War again. We've been tossing around ideas ever since the new movies came out. However, the decision is entirely up to Disney, the IP holder, and Electronic Arts, the exclusive video game license holder." So while this was the first real confirmation that Petroglyph had been hoping to develop a sequel, once again the possibility for a new Empire at War seemed to be out the window because of publisher disinterest for the time being, at least one that involved Petroglyph as the developers. This remains the latest we've heard about any possible Empire at War sequel, but in the time since that AMA, one more interesting development has taken place. This has come in the form of a partnership between Electronic Arts and Petroglyph Games to remaster some of the old CNC games. While this doesn't necessarily apply directly to Empire at War, it shows at the very least some of the contact Ted mentioned may have had an impact. This is of course my own speculation, but in 13 years of Empire at War, the existence of this partnership has been the biggest indicator to me that a new Empire at War entry developed by Petroglyph may not be impossible in the EA era of Star Wars games after all. What that would specifically mean is a whole other thing. That's all I have to say on the topic for now. Maybe if things go well, I'll have the opportunity to make another video on this in the future, but who knows. If you've enjoyed the video, please consider leaving a like, subscribing, or supporting the channel on Patreon. If you have questions or ideas for similar videos you'd like to see, please leave those in the comments as well.